Hi, I'm Maria, and I'm going to be talking to you about salmonellosis. Um, Salmonella is gram-negative, it's rod-shaped, and it colonizes the gut of animals. So after ingesting it, it travels through your stomach, and it can survive your stomach pH and travel to the small intestine and into the colon. And it travels through your epithelial cells and then gets taken up by macrophages, which can be taken to your blood into the rest of your body. It's motile, so it has flagella, as seen in this picture. It's facultative intracellular, which means it can grow and reproduce in a cell. And it was first identified in the 1800s, and it's named after the American scientist called Salmon. And he was a veterinary scientist, and the man who discovered the actual bacteria was working underneath him, but it's credited to his group, and it was named Salmonella in the 1990s. So the domain of salmonellosis is bacteria. The phylum is Proteobacteria. The class is Gamma Proteobacteria. The order is Enterobacteriales. And the species is Enterica and Bongari. And here you can see there's two subspecies, Enterica and Bongari, and Enterica has all these multiple subspecies, which subspecies Enterica, that's known to infect humans and mammals, and it includes about 2,000 serovars, which are just different strains of the bacteria, and the ones highlighted here are the ones to known cause infection in mammals and in humans. So, as I said before, the Salmonella is a facultative anaerobe, and it's able to survive and reproduce in macrophages. And with the help of type secretion system 1, it's able to invade the host cell, so it's able to go through T3SS1 mediated invasion, as seen here in the ruffles. It can do it independently and invaded, or it can be phagocytic uptake. It can be taken up through phagocytosis. And that is the one main component of how it's able to be introduced into a macrophage. And then a second type 3 secretion system 2, it delivers effectors into the cells and the formation of salmonella containing vacuole. So here you can see there's a little SCV of vacuole, and here that's able where the salmonella can undergo biogenesis, and it's necessary for salmonella to survive inside the cell. Okay, so then once inside the macrophage, the body triggers an inflammatory cascade, which brings a bunch of neutrophils to the site, and that can kill the salmonella and produce antimicrobials to limit the nutrients in the gut. Except salmonella can still grow and replicate even though there's not that many nutrients, and they can be transmitted through the bloodstream or to other mammals by fecal shedding. So there's two types of infection. One is non-typhoidal salmonella infection, which is the most common, and this includes the species Typhimurium and Enteriditis, and it has over 2,000 serovars, and there's 100 million cases worldwide. In the US, there are 1.35 million cases, 26,500 hospitalizations, and 420 deaths. This is mainly a foodborne infection, so animal to human transmission, and which is basically zoonosis, and it can be transmitted directly or indirectly, like through their fecal matter, and it can be drug resistant. And then here's also a map that shows the incidence of non-typhoidal salmonella. So you see it mostly in countries where there's not that much good sanitation, and it's also in the U.S. where we have been able to take it from other animals and from not being properly clean in the kitchen. And then there's typhoidal salmonella infection, and this includes S. typhi and S. paratyphi A, B, and C. And there's 12 to 27 million cases per year worldwide, and 135,000 deaths. And this is a result of poor sanitation. And then in the US, there are 5,700 infections and 620 hospitalizations. So normally this is when people travel to countries who have received this type of salmonella infection, and then there's human-to-human transmission, and then they travel back to the US, and that's how it's become spread in the United States. So there's no animal reservoir for this type of salmonella, and they can only infect and colonize humans. So it's spread through human-to-human transmission, and patients can also be asymptomatic and have the S. typhi in their liver. So there's one incidence of this one woman who cooked a bunch of food for people, and she was spreading it to all of them, even though she showed no symptoms, but she had the type of Salmonella typhi growing in her liver and was spreading it to everyone that ate her food. The drug can be drug resistant, which is also not good. Symptoms of the disease, there's non-typhoidal salmonella. So, as I said before, non-typhoidal salmonella, typhimurium, and enteriditis. So that includes fever, abdominal pain, diarrhea, nausea, vomiting, and they occur 6 to 72 hours after exposure, and they last 2 to 7 days. In most people, it's mild, but it can become severe in the young and elderly and immunocompromised. And it can enter the blood and infect brain and urinary tract. Symptoms of the disease in typhoidal salmonella are typhoid fever and paratyphoid fever. So after ingestion, they can enter the bloodstream and cause high fever, stomachache, headache, loss of appetite, or rash. The incubation period is 8 to 14 days for typhoid fever and 1 to 10 days for paratyphoid fever. Some cases lead to gastrointestinal bleeding or infection of the brain, and the elderly and immunocompromised are at high risk of complications. The diagnosis is that salmonella must be identified from fecal matter or from the blood. Antibody tests are used, but they're normally not as good and don't really always show positive results. Salmonella can be taken also from infected areas like the brain or urinary tract. Usually to treat it, you need to rest and hydrate. There are antibiotics for high-risk cases, especially ones with typhoid fever, except some strains are resistant to antibiotics, which is a growing concern. Some are treatable through vaccination, and others do not respond to vaccination. To prevent, basically, you need to keep all food areas clean, separate raw and cooked food so there's no cross-contamination, cook thoroughly at the correct temperature. Salmonella bacteria will not thrive in an environment of 55 degrees over 12 minutes, and you should also avoid raw meat, eggs, milk. Wash your vegetables, avoid unboiled and unclean water, and wash your hands before and after handling food, especially raw meat, and coming in contact with animals, especially animals that are sick. And just some relevant outbreaks. As of 3 months ago, there's been a salmonella outbreak in the US that's been linked to red onions in California. And there's been 120 cases in Canada, 400 cases in the US, and 17 hospitalizations. And it's spread to 43 states, and it's been linked to Thompson International Incorporated. So if you have red onions from Thompson International Incorporated, you should throw them out, or any other onions from that company, because there's a chance there was cross-contamination from them. And then one outbreak I thought was interesting. 2008 to 2009, there was an outbreak from peanuts, and the executive of it had to be jailed for 28 years due to hiding that there was salmonella in the peanuts and the peanut butter, and obstruction of justice, and he had to serve for 28 years due to 9 deaths. And then also there was, like during the inauguration of Bill Clinton, there was an outbreak linked to Jack in the Box, which resulted in the deaths of 4 children, and that was the result of it being linked to beef. And then my works cited.